So say horrible things. Somebody check the stream. I'm going to put it on my pocket there, Mike. It's not long enough. Actually, we're live now, so you know. Yeah, and then we'll archive it for others, yeah. 2 minutes, and we'll get started.
Josh, this computer shits on the one we got for performance.
What, his MacBook Pro?
Yeah, it's older. It's like 3 years older.
Why is that?
It's a 2013.
It's a faster processor.
It was like pretty maxed out at the time.
Yeah, ours like it's pegged like 98. He's like half processor and according to the review.
We're going to fix that next week. Whoa, it's real meta. See, it's meta.
Everything's meta at work or at Pittsburgh.
Yo, we'll be live in a few minutes.
We could get a round started, like. I do.
Okay, he's messing with me. I'm hearing it. Now I'm thinking something I'm doing.
Okay, so it's 6:30, so we'll get started. Mike, do we have anybody watching right now on YouTube?
Yes.
Woo!
I think it's all us.
Oh, it could be all us though. So we'll say this a couple times, but remind me to say it a lot. If you have questions and you're not in the room, you can post those questions in the YouTube channel chat, and we will pick those up and answer those as we can. This is a important meeting because we made our unit offers to about 60 different people for past participation. And then we're also coming up on the deadline for 2017 unit satisfaction as well. So the co-op is a real legal entity now, and we have lots to talk about tonight, so I'm just going to dive right in. So here is the state of everything as it stands today. In the center is the Cooperative LLC, and then that Cooperative LLC is going to be made up of, at official launch, of 30 legacy members from the old company, Red Blue Voice LLC, 30 newer members that 30 newer members that have earned a unit in the co-op through service prior to 2017. And then in December 1st, we'll be issuing offer letters for people that have satisfied their 2017 obligations. And so that includes the cash payment that's part of your membership, and that also includes any kind of service hours that we deem necessary to get admitted into the co-op. So just to refresh everyone's memory, the co-op will have a total of 300 units issued over the next, say, 2 or 3 years. And then we'll have to vote as to whether we expand that unit offering to more units or if we keep it locked at 300 and essentially close the community at however many members we have at that point. To date, like right now, like today, there are 3 subsidiaries, I guess, or affiliates of the co-op. So we literally have 3 other fully formed LLCs that have assets, that have value, that have revenue, that have debt. And Jason's going to go over all of that at the end of this, and that will be archived on YouTube privately for anyone who has a unit offer. So if you're listening and you wonder why we shut the live stream off when we start going over the financials, that's because like you guys out there don't need to know what we're doing. Come join the co-op, then you'll know. But people that have had unit offers made to them, they'll be able to access those financials through PDFs, but also through Jason's explanation of them in an unlisted video future moving forward. So here's where it gets confusing, and you should try to grab all this as much as you can. A lot of you guys are familiar with Academy Pittsburgh, and when the dust has all settled, and that'll all be by the end of October, the co-op will own 40% of that. Yes, Anthony. Anthony, if you're going to talk, you have to talk into that mic. The mic on the camera.
Okay. When do the past service member unit offers get mailed out?
That's going to be, well, we send it to you digitally. Did you get it digitally?
In Slack?
No, in your email.
Was that the one that said important?
Yeah, it's the one that said important. Yeah. But the physical copies will be mailed this week if you didn't get it digitally. But all that stuff, if you have questions about units and about financials and about shares, hold off because that's like the last slide of this deck. So as it stands right now, the co-op owns 40% of Academy. John Lang owns 50%. And then there's parsed out smaller chunks for me and Jason as founders shares because of the year and a half we put in. The cooperative owns 100% of the real estate LLC, and that's that Cooperative Holdings LLC that's up on the screen. And that was just newly formed last week and will be propagated with 744 East Warrington Avenue probably next week or the week after. So we're taking that county CITF money, buying the existing building that we occupy in the next week or two. And then there's this old legacy Red Blue Voice LLC. It's essentially going to continue to house all of our digital services. So whenever we sub you guys out to do freelance work, so like when we sub Buzzy out to do video work, or we sub Holland out to do design, or we sub Adam out to do infrastructure stuff, or Alden for video, like all of that goes through the old Red Blue Voice LLC. And we've renamed that to Work Hard Pittsburgh Digital Services just to make it more on brand, on message, and to communicate better what it does. If you remember, Red Blue Voice was a crowdfunding website, and it doesn't do that anymore, but it's the entity where all of the transactions, all the financials have been housed for the last, I don't know, what, like 5 years, right? 6 years? And then around 2016, Jason and I started separating all those transactions into these new LLCs to better compartmentalize our financials and also give us a little bit more risk reduction because, you know, like the real estate's going to have its own set of risk and the digital services has its own set of risks, and we want to be able to shield the co-op from any sort of litigation that might come down the pipe. So when Brian messes up a digital service gig, like we don't want the co-op getting sued. We want the right LLC having to deal with that stuff. So this is right now the state of everything. There's another half dozen LLCs in process, honestly. There are 2 or 3 projects ongoing right now. Our Kizzy replacement project, which has the potential to spin out into its own LLC. We have a partnership with Neighborhood Allies on a interactive map that shows how funding moves around the city of Pittsburgh. That could be white labeled and spun out into an LLC. We have another one too. What's Craig's working on that. Eric's working on our own internal project management software. That could spin out as an LLC. So keeping in that theme, right? Like we really want to make the co-op a product development entity, right? And Adam and I talked about a new LLC. Like there's a bunch of stuff. No, I mean the co-op Work Hard Pittsburgh LLC. We want to launch products when they have traction. We want to turn those products into their own founder share LLCs. So Anthony, if you had something that the co-op wanted to invest in or wanted to encourage, like maybe the co-op would take 20% and you would be left with 80 and we'd help you develop it, that kind of thing. Excuse me. I'm going to be clearing my throat for the next 10 minutes. So updates on real estate. So like I said, we'll be closing on 744 hopefully this week. The delay has been in clearing the titles as typical for these kind of deals. And we're using that $250,000 of CITF money to do that transaction. So essentially, you know, that entity in the next month or so will hold the commercial real estate of 744 East Warrington Avenue, and then the 2 residential leases that are on the 2nd and 3rd floor, as well as that commercial 1st floor. And then we started the financing pack for 829 Industry. Our financials, which Jason's going to go over later, have been submitted to LISC. the proposed deal structure, who people on the real estate committee have seen, but just generally, it's going to give us 20% of the ownership of that warehouse with the right of first refusal to purchase more of it over time. Our output to get that 20% is going to be $251,000. And then RA360 is going to come along with $1 million in kind of rehab and renovation on that building so that they have their 80%. So, yes, sir.
What's the timeframe on that?
It's hard to say. I mean, the hope is that we get this deal done by January and the construction's done, at least on our physical space, in like a month, and we'd do the move. Because like, there's not a lot that needs done in our part, right? It's just basically gutting it and painting it white, and then we'll do the rest. And access, right? So those unit offers that you've received, right? Like those are merit your attention because of the county grants, because of Hillman grants, because of the revenue that Work Hard Pittsburgh Digital Service generates. There is real cash value in system, but there's also real debt in system, and you have to weigh from a personal risk perspective whether or not you are going to accept those units or not. And we'll talk a lot about that and answer a lot of questions here in a slide or two. Another thing that we got to deal with is our lack of diversity in the co-op. So at launch, we'll be about 92% white, and this is mostly Brian's fault. I mean, he adds like 20% of the whiteness here. Ta-da! Sorry. And we're 75% male, that's mostly me. So the way we deal with that in Academy is we just don't let more white men join, right? So every session of Academy, we save, our African American in the room thinks that's funny. The 8% that's in the back of the room. It actually looks like 8% too. You're just like spot on demographically here tonight. So we basically save half the slots of Academy Pittsburgh for women and minorities, and we need to enact a similar kind of rule, I think, for the co-op. Now, we don't have to do that immediately, right? Like, we don't have to only let women and minorities in for the next 6 months, but if there's going to be 300 units offered over time, we need to carve out whatever, as a community, we think is an appropriate chunk of that only for people that bring diversity into the co-op. And that's going to make it hard to recruit, honestly, because like women, I shouldn't say that on a live mic. Let me think about that, how I want to put that. But generally, like, we don't do a good job retaining women at Work Hard Pittsburgh. Like, many join, but they don't stick around. And as a community, we need to figure out like what we're doing culturally, probably just dirt, honestly. Like, we're pretty messy, disgusting boys. That scares them away. So in October, Ron, I hope, will lead it, but we're going to have a consensus round, which is in your operating agreement. If you haven't read that, you should read that, to figure out how we're going to do better and how we're going to stop this from just being a bunch of white 30-something men doing startup stuff, okay? So that'll be the first kind of voting issue in October, because I assume by October, I know you'll all have to have signed your unit offers. Another huge thing and, that we need everyone's participation on is Hilltopolis. Hilltopolis is going to be our annual big event. And it's in Grandview Park, and it's supposed to raise awareness of the co-op. It's supposed to be us reaching into the community and being good neighbors, right? It's supposed to be us bringing something of value to Beltsuver, to Allentown, to Knoxville, to the people that we are surrounded by. And it's supposed to raise money for one of the Hilltop nonprofits. This time it's Brashear Kids. Next year, I suspect it's going to be a whole bunch of Hilltop nonprofits serving the community of the Hilltop. So you all should table at the event. You should commit to that, right? Like, you should have a presence there. Yes, Anthony? Nothing for co-op members, right? But the tables are $250 for everybody else, right? You should volunteer to work at the event. You should definitely attend the event, right? Because you want to be there telling the story of Work Hard because that's how we're going to find more revenue, is by being better and bigger and more present in market. And you should promote the event, and people like Brian and Buzzy can help you do that because they're on the social media team for Hilltopless. So please, 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 please table at the event and participate. September 22nd. Another kind of just real quick one-off one. We're going to launch a crowdfunding portal on workhardpittsburgh.com the day of the event. So we think that, and this is still very early, so if you have ideas about how this might work, please share them with me and Ryan. But basically, we want to have 5 live crowdfunding campaigns up on the Work Hard Pittsburgh crowdfunding portal at any time. And at first, we want to keep them really super easy to fulfill, right? Maybe some rain barrels, maybe some MetaMesh technology, right? And what we want to start doing is every time we have big community, deep-reaching events, we want to promote these crowdfunding asks by co-op members. And part of that, at some point, like early 2018, will be like, name the conference room at the new Work Hard Pittsburgh space in the warehouse, or put a floor in for us. Who knows, right? Like, it'll be infrastructural stuff on the real estate transaction. But we want to get people used to the idea of funding rain barrels in a community, funding MetaMesh in a community, doing graphic design for a nonprofit. It can be anything, right? As long as it's community impact driven.
Team built around running those projects, because in my experience, unless you are dedicating full-time work to those kind of campaigns, they
Yeah.
don't go anywhere.
Well, that's why we need to make them smaller first, right? Because we can do it in a sprint. So if Anthony wants to raise $500 to put 3 rain barrels in Mount Washington, like, we can blast it out for a week, and I feel like we can get that, right? But like when we make them bigger, that's going to be really,
Especially less and less people are going to contribute as we do more and more.
well, unless they're really good, right? Like, so if Anthony's rain barrels have really good outcomes, and we document that, then that's, I mean, this is for sure a risk, right? Like, there's no guarantee that this is going to work long term, but I think it's worth a try. Because what we're then saying is that the co-op is always doing something for the community, and the co-op members aren't necessarily profiting off of that, but they are the energy, the human resource, the middleman that transacts it, right? So this is mostly Ryan's Haggerty's take on it, and I think it's a really good take on it. But we're going to have that launched by Hilltopless, because one of the things we want to feature at Hilltopless is, like, if Anthony's going to do a table at Hilltopless, he should have that crowdfunding campaign up, and we might just get it satisfied right there, right? Like, we might just be able to, like, get that $500 for 3 rain barrels and be done, kind of thing. So a way to start teaching the market about what the good community work that you guys do, but also compelling them to play a more active financial part in it. Notice we took all of the old Crowdosaurus branding and put that up there, right? Like, very nice. Nobody cares. Okay, this is the important stuff. So if you're online listening, please listen. In an email last week, if you're an old Red Blue Voice member, or if you were an active member of the community here at Work Hard Pittsburgh prior to 2016, there's a good chance you received a unit offer for 1 unit. If you didn't receive a unit offer, it's probably because you failed in one of the key metrics on the rubric that we created and judged everyone by. So Adam and Ryan and Buzzy, right? You were there, weren't you? And I took a list of everybody who's ever paid any kind of cash into the system, or to the best of our ability, anybody who's done service in the system prior to 2017. And then we scored you by about 10 categories, I think? 10 or, yeah. And we did that, and then sorted you, and we made a threshold, and people that were above that threshold were made a unit offer. People that were below that threshold were not. So we did our best to be fair. Honestly, one of the heaviest weighted categories was, did you pay cash into the system? Because we think that's an important part of this model. You've got to contribute financially. Okay, so those unit offers that were made, and you'll get a physical copy if you haven't mailed to you, if you haven't already, on top of that digital copy. You must make a decision on that by September 29th, 2017. We need to lock the cap table down for the year 2017, so everybody has to decide whether they're in or out. And then in December 1st, we're going to make unit offers for everyone who participated this year, the year of 2017. So your participation from January 1, 2017 to December 31st, 2017, that's a whole nother offering that won't occur for a couple months yet. And we're locking down, actually, membership at the end of this month, I think. So there will be no new co-op members in October. There won't be new co-op members in November. There won't be new co-op members in December. You have had to have committed and done what you're supposed to do prior to that or on the way to that in the meantime. So what you should be super aware of, right? Rufus, come here. What you should be super aware of is I have a spreadsheet that shows your financial contribution year to date. And many of you are falling short and not on pace to hit $540, right? That's the cash contribution for membership in 2017. And I don't think we're going to make exceptions on that. I don't think it makes sense to. But as a community, we can decide that starting in October, what we're going to do with people that are close or some people that have done a ton of service but haven't done any cash contribution. We may still have a rubric like we did for 2016 to see if we make offers. And then you need to talk to your accountants and your own personal lawyers about the consequences of accepting that unit, because there are going to be tax consequences one way or the other. If the co-op posts a loss, it's an LLC, that loss will pass through to your personal taxes. And that's good, in theory. It's not going to be huge, but it might be some amount, right? If the co-op posts a profit, that's even more scary. Because if the co-op posts a profit but doesn't set aside enough money to pay for your tax consequence, you're going to be obligated to pay out of pocket for that profit. Now, in our operating agreement and in our standards and practice document, the co-op is supposed to pay your out-of-pocket tax consequence. But there's no guarantee that that'll be possible, and that's the risk, right? Jason might go on a bender. He might drink all the profits up on April 14th, and then you're like, bro, I need my $1,000, and he's like, I ain't got it, right? So these are real risks that we all face. So you have to think about that critically and weigh the risk with the potential gains and decide if culturally this is where you want to be, right? Like what we only want people that are believers that this long-term has upside for them. We don't want just hangers on, right? It doesn't make sense for us. So, nope, we're not going to do that yet. So, questions about cooperative membership, because I feel like this is the thing that we really need to spend the most time on. And Mike, if you could watch that YouTube chat, because if there are people watching live, how many people are watching live? 2, 4, 3. 3 committed. Good job, you 3.
Mike Swan on the other.
It's like they're all in the room. But if you have questions and you're not in the room, post those in YouTube and we'll answer them. Any questions about that? Did anybody? Yes, Derek. Talk loud into that mic.
As you were saying, if the co-op calls a loss or a profit annually, that would basically be a status update through one meeting or another that would be happening every 3 months or so, probably, right?
Well, so our experience with accountants, and we're changing accountants this year, so we don't know how the new one's going to be, is that no matter how well prepared Jason and I are, it's always coming down to the wire. So we start doing the taxes for all of these entities like December, essentially, right? And then in January, we give them to the accountants and then hope that in a timely manner, they give us back what the loss or profit's going to be. But we have no control over how quickly they do that.
This year, for instance, we turned in all records the first weekend of February. All accounts were reconciled. There were minor changes, but we still didn't get our K1s and our information from that accountant until first week of April.
Yeah.
Hopefully with the new accountant, things will be a little bit more efficient and things like that, but there are no guarantees. We've had good, positive interactions with the new accountant so far, but
Well, and that's why we're firing this old accountant.
Right.
Because like no matter how quickly we give him the reconciled accounts, he still is giving us back all the documents that you guys need to file your personal taxes way late. But just as a good rule of thumb, we send you this document called a K1 document, and on that K1 it shows your tax liability from the pass-through of the LLC. As a good rule of thumb, you're probably not going to get that till March. So if you are an early filer, you're going to have to delay your filing to accommodate that document that's going to come late. So if you file back in January, I guarantee you we're not going to be ready, right? Like we're not even obligated till the end of January to give you your 1099s, right? Yeah, so like we won't even have your 1099s out necessarily until the end of January. So just be mindful of those kind of things. Like if you have habits, they may have to change.
Okay, so I am a long-time work harder, first-time caller. I feel like I believe in the mission. I think that the idea of what is happening here is really amazing, but I don't feel like it makes sense for me to become a member of this entity. Why should or shouldn't I become a member of this entity?
You should not, because you don't feel like you should be.
Okay.
Like we're not gonna beg people to participate. We're not gonna make a case for people to participate.
And my question is like, who would be an appropriate person to become a member?
I think folks that are activists, entrepreneurs, or nonprofit, long-term are gonna find value and safety nets in this system. I don't know that you'll ever see an exit. We'll never promise you a dividend, but we're gonna do our best to acquire real, meaningful assets that are gonna benefit your projects and businesses. And that could be commercial real estate, that could be equipment for telling your story, that could be any number of things that you already see the pattern emerging. Yes, Anthony.
And so the follow-up to that is, if you are not a member, but you are a co-worker, will you still see any of the benefits of that co-working space, or will you be excluded from those opportunities?
You will not ever access capital funds, right? You won't get preferential subcontracts, like we won't sub you out once we get formalized and rigorous. So co-op members will be the freelancers that get the gigs. We won't advocate for you like we advocate for co-op members. So yeah, there'll be differences. And I think those differences are not quite yet binary. Like they're still real blurry because we've been blurry and now we're getting more segmented. But like as time moves on, the difference between a tenant and a co-op member is going to be stark. Anthony.
And now, if you are a member, what committee would actually make those decisions, or would it not be on a committee?
I think many committees are going to make those decisions. Yeah, I think depends on, right? Like there's a production committee making decisions right now about the gear we're going to buy to support Hilltopless, but also not just that short-sighted, but like down the road. Adam.
Regarding the cash input
Yes.
to the membership fees,
Yes.
I paid my first month. Is the next month automatically deducted? Because I find the website confusing, and I don't know if I've paid the second month or not.
Yeah. So you are right that the website was completely rebuilt in July, and it blew up a lot of people's progress. I would say, right? Like so, people were on pace for $540, and then we had to switch everything over on the website because we had to clarify a coworker or a tenant, I guess, versus tenant's the wrong word, but somebody who's sharing the space but not on the cooperative track, and a co-op member, right?
A member and a coworker.
Member and a coworker, that's right, exactly. And then we added on those extra key fees too because we felt like some people were not doing what they should do in terms of like having guests in, right? But tomorrow I'm going to send an email out to everybody who's paid any amount of money in 2017 with a complete status update as to what you paid in, what the balance is, and then figure out a way to close that balance by December 1st.
Okay.
Yes, Anthony?
And I don't want to go too far back, but I know, so you said that you're mailing out or emailing out the membership agreements for the post members. Has that already been decided?
Yeah,
I
you
Yeah.
received a unit offer for past participation prior to 2017 in your email.
That was not the important email, that was a different one?
No,
There
it
was
said,
two.
it-
There was two that said important.
yeah,
At
there,
least that I got.
yeah, there were
I just looked
two
at-
separate emails, right? And then you'll get a physical copy of that as well, mailed to you with paper if, you're into killing trees.
Piper.
Paper.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, and you must read those documents. And you must follow the instructions in that email. Just so you know. By September 29th. Yes, Ronald.
Mr. Josh, I went into the website and looked around and tried the first couple times to register, and I got a bunch of 404 pages.
Those are fixed, Ron.
Okay,
I hope.
just now.
Just now.
Yeah.
Those are not fixed, Ron.
I ended up making it, but we have to check to see if it.
Okay, yeah, we'll double check. And there's really confusing things happening there because we created a whole nother prorated membership checkout workflow basically to try to be adaptive to people.
Joining now.
Yeah, but the problem is like everybody in this room owes a weirdly different amount of money because like maybe Buzzy started paying in the middle of March on the 13th of March, and so he had this prorated portion that was like $7.22. And so I'm gonna have to send personal emails to everybody. This is where you are. This is why you owe us by 12/1, and make sure that we keep following up with people.
Yeah, we just want to make sure nobody who's making an effort doesn't fall through the cracks.
That's right. We're gonna be really meticulous about sending out emails and well, we're not gonna do phone calls because that's ridiculous, but we're gonna send out a lot of emails and some Slack messages too. Yeah, Anthony.
Okay, so if I was offered one unit for my past service,
Prior to 2017,
and then I fulfilled all the obligations in 2017,
you will have 2
I will
units
have 2 units.
of the
and
300.
And what out of 300, what is that like monetarily, like what is that value? Is there a value on that?
Jason's gonna go over the financials
Okay.
once we shut the live stream off.
Gotcha.
So you're not gonna call me?
I'm not gonna call you.
I thought it went so well.
I hate phone calls. Adam,
Is there a way, like, how many units do I have?
I don't know.
Okay. who
Did you
knows?
have no? Did you have one from past participation, and you have the opportunity for 2017.
If I pay my bill?
Yes.
Okay.
So you would have 2 of 3. You would have 2 of approximately 60 units offered. But our assumption is maybe 40 of those 60 are going to actually accept the unit. So you would have 2 of 40. We just don't know, right? We made offers to about 60 people, and how many of those accept, we don't know. We won't know until September 29th.
So we were told that for 2017, we had to vest a certain number of hours that we donated
Yeah.
into the co-op. Are we
Yeah.
getting to that, or?
So once the unit offers are accepted or rejected in October, we're gonna have another member meeting and we're gonna vote on that very issue. Like, what are we gonna do about the 50 service hours that we've been talking about that we haven't executed on? Maybe we'll just do like a weekend, maybe Hilltopless will be it, right? Like we'll have to decide as a community what we're gonna do with those 50, because I don't think anybody realistically expects 50 hours of documented service between now and December. So we're gonna have to think about that and vote on it. I mean, most people have 50 hours, honestly, right? Like, if you're working on Hilltopless, you have 50 hours. If you have done Give Camp, you have 50 hours. If you worked events, you have 50 hours. If if you've done discounted work for a nonprofit, it's tons of stuff we can count. But I don't think it's worth getting in the weeds on those service hours in 2017. I think that's our goal for 2018. Like, we start 2018 tracking that shit, formalized, and be ready to execute on that next year. Anthony.
And I have to ask this on behalf of Dan, will involvement be used to track those hours?
I have not yet even looked at Dan's, I don't think Dan's even sent me the memorandum of the MOU yet. I don't think Dan's even sent me the contract yet. So like, I don't know. Till Dan sends me the contract, I can't answer that. And honestly, in October, I won't even be the one answering that. All of the people that have accepted units will be the ones answering that. But Dan's got to send me the contract either way because there's nothing to talk about in October if we don't have the contract. You hear that, Dan? Do you hear me? Okay, if there's no more questions, I don't want to rush you through it. We're going to shut the live stream off. This next part will be still pushed to YouTube as an unlisted video that we will share with people via email that have been given unit offers. And our friend Jason is going to do this part.
Please click yes.
Yeah.